This is Branebender, a wavetable synthesizer that I created in Kontakt. And now I'm going to show you what is it about. Since there is a lot going on in this instrument, I will split the guide to different videos. This one is overview. I will show you the layout and cover obvious or less complicated parts. There are few unusual sections which I will discuss briefly here and which I will try to explain in detail in separate videos. First off, this is not a standalone VST. You will need native instruments Kontakt to play it. Full license, that is not Kontakt player, version 6.6 or newer. Then it is a synthesizer. Kontakt is known as a sample player, but it also has Wavetable module. Branebender only uses Wavetables, so it's not really a sample library, even though Wavetables are technically samples. Let's talk user interface first. It is inspired by old vector video games and it is monochromatic. That is, there are white graphics on dark background. And you can adjust background color for the entire instrument. First section is named Bender. It is like the front panel or the main hub. There are oscillator controllers, main filters and envelopes here. Then Kinematics is automation system for XY paths on Bender page. And it is sort of over-engineered LFO. Waves is where you select wavetables. Patterns is the arpeggiator. For this instrument, I wrote ARP engine from scratch and it is somewhat unique. There are multiple lanes and you can build patterns from sequenced building blocks. Shapes is modulation section. Effects is insert effect track. And space is send effect track. Then satellite dish icon will take you to the setup panel. Since we look at setup controllers, let's see how color control works. You move around the brush icon to change color and saturation. Then slide the diode icon to set brightness. When you like the result, you can save it as a preset. There is a preset widget here. Note that the color is not saved in snapshots, only in the patch or workstation project. Finally, there is a book icon here. Use it to show or hide text feedback from controllers. When it is switched on every time you move a controller, it will tell you what it does. The interface graphics are often somewhat abstract, so this can be helpful when you explore the instrument. Or you can turn it off for aesthetic reasons. I am now going to reset everything by loading the init snapshot. We look at Bender section. There are 4 oscillators. As you can see, each waveform is presented as a graphic. You can load different wavetables into each oscillator, and each wavetable is a morph between 2 waveforms. You can control morph position with bend levels table. Currently, first oscillator wavetable is morph between sine and triangle. And the second is morph between square and blade. In between waveform graphics, there are XY paths, which are main performance controllers. You can control them with hardware touchpad or record automation in your workstation, or just move it with mouse. However, my intention was to animate them internally. The automation systems for the paths is called Kinematics. I will demonstrate how it works in a moment. The central pad has 2 icons, Sun and Saturn. Sun is the mixer. The closer it gets to oscillator box, the more oscillator is prominent in the mix. When you move the cursor to a corner, you only hear one oscillator. Then Saturn controls oscillator bend levels. that is waveform morph position, and it affects all 4 oscillators. You can further transform morphed waveform with wave shapers. Each oscillator has its own wave shaper, which you can control with satellite icons. Horizontal movement affects wave shaping strength, and vertical movement affects LFO amount. Here you can select wave shaping type, LFO rate and LFO shape. Astronaut icons control filter frequency and resonance. There are 2 filters, each applies to pair of oscillators. Then this icon controls filter LFO amount. You can select different filter types here. And filter bypass switch is here. You can change oscillator octave tuning by clicking here. Now let's look at Kinematics. Kinematics is a kind of two-dimensional LFO game. There is a cursor which can travel between checkpoints or bounce inside pad area. Its movement can be applied to pads in Bender section. So this section is in one hand completely unnecessary, and in the other hand it is a core idea behind this instrument, to create a non-random flow for waveforms, shape and balance, and to get a sense of evolving sound. This is one of the sections that deserve separate video, so I will skip the mechanics of programming cursor motion. Also, if you don't want to dive into it, there are presets, so you can just load pre-programmed path. And here's what you need to know. There are 6 simulations that can run simultaneously. 4 are dedicated to main pads in Bender section: Sun, Saturn and Astronauts. That is oscillator mix, waveform morph, and filter cutoff and resonance. Remaining 2 simulations can be patched to any of remaining pads, or used as modulation source for the effects. The Kinematics label here is on-off switch for the whole engine. It is a vital switch, as you may want to stop the engine to be able to set up initial cursor position in a simulation. Also, it is reasonable to switch it off when you don't use it, as it takes resources. Then each simulation has individual on-off switch, that is the light bulb icon. So, to make it run you will need to enable both, the engine and individual simulation. For example, to animate oscillator mixer, I need to switch the light bulb next to sun icon and turn the whole section on. As you see, the simulation cursor starts moving, and it is being applied to main section pad. Now you can just click on preset name to load the path. Another useful feature is shape tracing. Switch the star map icon and the simulation cursor will mark its path as it moves. This is not particularly interesting for basic presets, but things can get quite convoluted. Let's see. Without getting into path programming, there are two more features to point at. First, you can slow down simulations individually. Use sim speed slider here. The whole engine is synchronized with host tempo, and the speed slider acts as a divider. At full speed, simulation progress is updated at every MIDI tick. At half speed, it is updated on every second tick, and so on. It is a way to adjust speed without affecting path shape, which may be a sum of different time-related parameters. Now the second thing. Each simulation has an initial state, which can be recalled, so whole engine can be restarted to repeat the same motion. Let's look at Setup section. This is Kinematics Auto Trigger menu. You can define when to restart all simulation paths. Options are Transport Start, that is every time you press play in your workstation. First Note, that is after transport start when first note is being played, which is default option. Then every first note. It means that whenever all keys are released and you press a new key, the engine restarts. Let's see how it works. There's also option to restart manually. You can define MIDI button or use MIDI key or a pedal. Besides kinematics, the restart button can apply to arpeggiator and modulators. Use three buttons here to include or exclude these sections. And now, on to Waves section. Here's where you assign wavetables to oscillators. As I said, each wavetable is a morph between two waveforms. There are 16 waveforms in all possible combinations excluding repeating pairs, which gives us 120 wavetables. Basic waveforms like sine or triangle were rendered digitally in Wave Editor. These are marked with digiprefix, a short for digital. Other waveforms were captured from analog hardware, that is a modular system or a guitar paired with distortion effects. So, for example, Mini comes from Minimoog clone module, and Bender is captured from Tone Bender fast clone that I built. So it looks like a simple affair, but there is a twist, which is the way you select wavetables. It may be confusing, as you don't click on a name in a list. Instead, the whole area is a cursor pad, just like once in Bender section. There are 4 cursors, graphically reflecting position of given oscillator in the interface. You need to grab a cursor and drag it around to select a wavetable. The fun thing is that you can patch it to kinematics. Let's see. I'll pick one of extra simulations and choose Select Waveform. Now this only applies to one oscillator, but if you use the link option, the catch is that when you change Wavetable, it won't apply to notes that are already playing. So you should pair this with arpeggiator. Not very practical, but I just couldn't resist. Speaking of arpeggiator section is called patterns. This section is quite convoluted and definitely deserves a separate video. For now, let's note that there are many presets, and you don't need to dive into details right away. As with Kinematics, arpeggiator label button turns whole engine on and off. It has 3 lanes. Algo sequence, when you can sequence different algorithms like up, down or bounce, switching between them after a number of steps. Then there is volume sequence and duration sequence, so you can play shorter or longer notes. The 3 lanes form a pattern. And you can have multiple patterns, that is up to 6, playing at the same time. They can play different octaves, different ranges or different oscillators. For now, just note that light bulb switch is used to turn individual patterns on and off, so don't confuse it with ARP engine switch. The functionality overlaps, but only when you use just one pattern. Let's see how it works. I will latch a chord and switch between different presets. And shapes. This is where you find regular modulators. Let's reset everything first. There are dedicated pitch and volume LFOs. Then there are 4 LFOs and 2 step sequencers which you can use to modulate effects. I will demonstrate how you do that, but first we should check the effects section. As you see, there is not much here at the moment. You have 4 empty effect slots where you can load different effects from what Kontakt has to offer. Here's the list. Let's pick phaser. The effect name acts as bypass button. It is actually bypassed now, so let's switch it on. Now phaser is processing oscillator A. 1, 2, 3 and 4 before effect name refer to effect bus number, so phaser is in bus 1. If you want to route more oscillators to phaser, you can change bus assignments in Waves section. At the moment, each oscillator is on separate bus, but we can change that and, for example, route oscillator B to bus 1. Now, phasor affects two oscillators. If you want the effect on all oscillators, you can change effect insert point. There's a menu here. And now phasor is on master bus and is applied to all oscillators. As you can see, there is insert bus and master bus to choose from. The difference is that insert bus is placed before send effect's return point, while master bus is processing everything, including echoes and reverbs. Also, there are presets. The vertical bars icon invokes preset window. Each effect type has its own set of presets, with some exclusions like wah or filter, which just doesn't have enough controllers to make it worthwhile. You can also save your own presets and move the window around, which is not an obvious feature inside a Kontakt instrument. Now, how about those modulations? Let's add modulator to phasor rate. Back to Shapes section. Turn on LFO on. Under Modulation matrix, you see that LFO1 is currently unused. Click on that and pick Select Target from Effects page. It automatically takes you to Effects section, and now you can click on any knob you want to attach to LFO1. And this is it. You see Modulation indicator is active. The horizontal sliders in Modulation matrix control modulation depth. Note that you can add multiple modulators to the same parameter. Let's add a step sequencer to phasor rate. Reduce steps, make it bipolar, then enable sequencer. Click on sequencer 1 entry in the matrix. And done. For modulation target, you can pick any knob controller from Effects and Space sections. That is with few exceptions, like convolution reverb, where changing parameters makes it recalculate whole response file, and modulating it would break the instrument. Excluded controllers will be shown as blanks, which looks like this. If you change section view without clicking on a valid knob, that will cancel assigning modulator, so just switch back and forth and the controllers are back in place. Also note that only parameters with round knobs like this can be attached to modulators. It won't work with buttons or sliders. Besides space and effects, there are three hard-coded modulation targets. That is quantized pitch, detune and bend levels. Pitch is designed to be used with step sequencer. Let me demonstrate. The tune is like the pitch LFO here. in case you would like to use different modulation source. Bend level applies to waveform morph. Let's see. Also, you can use those additional kinematics simulations as a modulation source. Since this is two-dimensional movement, one path produces two modulations for x and y axis. The final entry in modulation sources is aftertouch. By default, it is attached to the tune, but you can use it for any other target. To disable aftertouch, either set depth to 0 or remove target. And now, the final frontier. Sound effects are located here. This section is very similar to effects. Name label is bypass switch, though there is no insert point obviously. You can choose between different flavors of delays and reverbs for each of 3 slots. There are presets, and knobs can be modulated. I think that's it for overview video. Let's just have another look at setup page. You can adjust velocity curve. There is master limiter, which is loaded at the very end of signal chain. It can be useful to tame loudness. There is transpose knob. It works at note level, so it will only affect new notes. You can set it to affect only arpeggiator. Then add MIDI automation, and you can, for example, use mod wheel to transpose patterns as they play. Then there is Note Volume Randomizer. Again works at note level. You can use it as humanizer function for arpeggiator. That would conclude this video. Making of this instrument was a long journey for me. If you find it interesting, look for deep dive videos for kinematics and arpeggiator. Things will get weirder there.